In today's video, we're going to talk about an indicator that I've been using for several years and a couple of ways that I use them for both as a lagging indicator, but also as a leading indicator and as a filter. So perhaps it might be useful for you to know this and experiment a bit with that indicator, because I think it's one of the simpler and also most effective indicator that I know of. So let's get started with some charts. You can pause the video if you want to read exactly the formula for these, but I think an image is worth 1,000 words. So let's start with the first way that I use this indicator. The first application for this is as a trend filter. So whenever I see that price is trading below the weekly pivot, which is the red line, then I don't want to go long, because that would be stacking the odds against me. So I want to look for shorts. So what I'll do is I'll look at a 4-hour chart or even a 1-hour chart. And if I see that the price is above it, then I'm looking for longs. And the reason I'm doing this video today is that I was long on this pair since last week. I took several trades. I entered around here and I got out, entered, got out a few times, and I even got stopped out on some cases. Like I had a stop over here and it reversed and I got back in. But eventually this week, price went below the weekly pivot, and at that point, that's when I completely scrapped the idea of that trade, because what I was doing is I had seen this pattern on the weekly, and then it went down, it tested this, and then it went up all the way in this area. So my thinking was, well, I'll try to establish a long position on this pair, and it might still be a good trade eventually, but for now I had to put it on ice because my indicator here, the weekly pivot, is now trading above the price. So I don't know if it's gonna go down as much as this. I don't know really what's gonna go down. So what I know for sure is that this pivot is going to come down next week. So if ever I see price going either sideways or going below and then coming back in, then I can reactivate this trade, if you want, or this pattern that I've seen on a bigger time frame, and start back trying to establish a position in it. But right now, what it was telling me is that it's time to put this on ice and move on to a different opportunity. So trend filter is the first way that I use this. So let's load another chart and I'll show you the second way. So the second way that you can use this indicator is if you add a daily pivot to your chart as you use a weekly pivot, you can use it as an additional indication or confirmation of trend direction. So the second way is to use it as a breakout indicator. And the way you do this is that whenever you see a confluence of pivots that are almost equal, like you see over here, when there is a great step taken on the downside, in this case, because we're looking for shorts, this pivot becomes lower than all of these three. So now it's acting as a breakout indicator, basically telling you that you now have permission to look for shorts. So the third way that I use this indicator is as a momentum indicator. So the distance between this daily pivot and this one is relatively small, but then it gets bigger and bigger, and eventually it starts to slow down compared to the previous distance of the two. So now I know my momentum has slowed down considerably, so I should probably stop looking for shorts. And the fourth way that I use this is as an additional trend filter, but using the daily pivot as well. What I mean by that is that even though the price here is below the weekly pivot, what I notice is that this pivot is lower than this one, indicating that the midterm trend is reversing. So what this means is that now I consider this these 2 days to be neutral. So I don't go long, I don't go short. I just wait for confirmation. And the confirmation comes on this day where the pivot becomes higher again than the weekly pivot, and then price is above as well, and I have a higher pivot than the previous one. So I know here I'm pretty safe to start going long, And as this pivot becomes higher than this one, then I know that this is reversing as well. So even though price is higher than the weekly pivot, because the daily pivot is now lower, then I have to really consider not trading this pair at all and looking for opportunities where the probabilities are stacked in my favor. So now I'm on MetaTrader. This is one of my templates that I use for nighttime trading so that it doesn't affect too much my sleeping cycle. So that's why I use a black background. And you can use this as you can use the supports and resistances as targets. So whenever you see confluence between previous supports and resistances, and there's on top of that some type of pivot target, like a support here, then you can use that to liquidate your current position. And the other way that I use them is I can use the daily pivot to indicate which of the pairs is the weakest or the strongest, or in between. So for instance, here we have the Great Britain pound Canadian, Great Britain, the pound yen, and the pound USD. And what this tells me in a single look is that this one is weaker than that one, and this one is stronger than the other ones because price was able to go beyond the daily pivot. So what this tells me is, like right now with Friday, it's 1:33 p.m. So I'm not going to look for a position now before the weekend. So what I'll do is that next week, if ever I see that the pound USD has a good setup and the weekly pivot becomes much lower, if I see that price gets higher than my weekly pivot, then this one will be favored for longs. So I know that this is a lot of information regarding a single indicator, but I want to show you the versatility of this indicator because it can be used as a trending indicator, as a filter, it can be used as a target, it can be used as a momentum indicator as well. And that is why this is one of my favorite indicators. So let me know in the comments below what is your favorite indicator, and I'll see you in the next one.